Good morning to welcome you on behalf of our President Leonardo Basilichi. He's very sorry to be not here for our other commitment. And we are very happy to welcome you in our Chamber of Commerce. Our Chamber of Commerce is an ancient building of the 17th century, and we renovated it on 2018. We have a lot of facility for our enterprises in this place, and we have just seen the former stock exchange of the chamber. And as you have seen, the building offers a conference, training room with a lot of facilities, and so it's a pleasure for me to welcome you again to our chamber and to wish you a good work. Thank you. Thank you.
And now is the turn of our Deputy Mayor of the municipality in charge of economic development and tourism, Mrs. Cecilia.
Good morning and welcome to everyone. It's a pleasure for the administration of Florence to host the Economic Development Forum of EUROCITIES in Firenze. As Deputy Mayor of Economic Development and Tourism of the city of Florence, I would like to express my sincere appreciation to all the organization for having been able to organize this forum in Florence, because it's a city which deserves this kind of precious moment of exchange. I also welcome you here at the Chamber of Commerce headquarters on behalf of the Mayor, Dario Nardella, and on behalf of the President, Leonardo Basilichi, who apologize for not being able to be here today. But they are very proud to have all these international representatives in this space to discuss economic issues and their development on an international perspective. For Florence to host such a big event involving politicians, researchers, and professionals from around the world represent the confirmation that our work on developing a hospitable and welcoming cities, not only known as the city of art destination, is bearing fruit. Today, I welcome you here in the open-air Museum of Renaissance in the cities of Brunelleschi's Dome, but I'm not welcoming here only in the Italian art city you might have heard about. I welcome you here in more. I'm welcoming you in the city of transformation, in the heart of ideas in evolution, in the landscape beyond city center 5 kilometers, in the place where tradition and innovation coexist and together form an alliance for the best Florence for citizens, tourists and investors. This year we celebrate 500 years from the death of Leonardo da Vinci. Leonardo used drawing to skillfully dissect mechanical devices and reassemble them in an innovative way, using the full range of text and illustration techniques he had mastered. Well, I'm convinced that Leonardo continues to teach us something. The path of creativity and ingenious smartness can still guide us to foster innovation. Florence is a tactile ergonomic canvas, and we must draw the city of tomorrow, taking advantage of precious occasions such as these forums. Here, one city can learn from the other. My experience will help you to develop ideas, and your story will inspire our future decisions. We are joining a city going international and full of possibilities, both for startups and small business, and we are happy to share a European vision for the cities of the future with you all. So I invite you to explore this changing Florence, wishing all the best in your work, and have a good conference and enjoy our city. Thank you.
And now is the turn of the Prorector of the University of Florence, Professor André.
Dear colleague, good morning. Today it's a great pleasure for me to welcome you to this EUROCITIES meeting dedicated to innovation and ecosystem. I bring you greetings from the University of Florence and its President, Professor Luigi Day. I believe that many of you already know Florence, but some of you are here for the first time. Florence is known as the city of Renaissance, a city of art and culture. I hope that by the end of this meeting you will be able also to appreciate the opportunity that we have in Florence for innovation. The themes that will be discussed are very stimulating, and they remind us about the third mission of universities, to ensure that university knowledge is aimed at improving the social, cultural, and economic growth of societies. All around the world we are living in a delicate phase in which technology and finance both have a great impact on countries everywhere. Technology has changed the way we communicate, basically removing time as distance. The time zone is the only obstacle to interaction. This has changed the economy, markets, companies, and the way we work. At the global level, finance is looking more and more to models aimed at making money. Small but strong groups are joining together to scale up, while less aggressive groups have difficulties. This brings us to a redistribution of riches with evident social inequalities. Social well-being, employment, economic growth are the main indicators we have to address. Europe does not have investment capital or national resources for low-cost manufacturing. Innovation is therefore a key factor, and innovation is based on culture, knowledge, and education. In my opinion, this is why we need the third mission, and the university should focus on the third mission. Education, technology transfers, lifelong learning, soft skills, contamination, and young entrepreneurship are the major tools for the university third mission. The future will see more and more changes brought by technology, and the challenge will be to take advantage of them. For example, the third sector, as an emerging economy, new needs, new jobs. Big data and 5G as a breakthrough in information technology. Smart city as a new model driven by social inclusion and sustainability. Industry or company 4.0 as the fourth industrial revolution. In this context, it will be known that cities are playing a more and more important role as pillar of innovation. Last year, the University of Florence, more than 400 young students were involved in activities focused on entrepreneurship and innovation. This produced 80 new projects and 80 new spin-offs. In Florence, we have built an ecosystem for innovation in which public institutions, stakeholders, and private companies work together. The University Incubator, Murate Idea Park, Nana Bianca, Impact Hub, the Student Hotel, and the Chamber of Commerce are some of the members of this ecosystem where young people can find support for their ideas, from basic trainings to acceleration to market to funding through the Hubble project promoted by Florence Bank Foundation. I'm sure that this meeting will be a good occasion for exchanging ideas and planning new interaction and new projects that connect our beautiful city in Europe ecosystem more and more. Best wishes for your meeting, and benvenuti e buon lavoro.
So thank you very much for coming here. I'm Alexandra. Together with Pietro, we were the ones who are sending to you all the emails. We work for the EUROCITIES, so please feel to contact us if you have any questions later. So now today we have quite a busy day, but we were trying to find different ways of cooperation, different ways of work. So please be active. I know the most important question. The Wi-Fi is open. Please, the network is working in Florence. You can log in. Well, it's logging through your social account. If you have any problems, we will help you on that. Please try to do it now. Also, a small reminder, we don't have roaming in the European Union, so it should be fine at the end of the day. But please try to use it because at the end of the keynote speech and also panel debate, we will use the Slido for you to ask the questions. So during the first day, first we have the keynote speech, later on we have the panel debate, and after this part, we'll invite you for the project lunch, which would be very interesting. We'll have the presentation of the projects from Florence, from iCapital, and our EUROCITIES project by Bernadette. We will also have the political lunch, so politicians will be going in a bit different direction, but what is also very important, before it we'll have a family photo, so please be prepared also for a small photo shoot. Later on we'll go for the City Lab part. I'll explain a bit more after the panel debate who is going where and what we will be doing. And then at the summary of the City Lab, after the summary of the City Lab, we'll have the guided visit into the Museum Bardini, and then cocktail and the dinner. Okay, so that's all from me. And now I would like to give the floor to our keynote speaker, Esteve Almirall, who will present us what are the innovative cities, how actually the innovation policies should look in the cities. Esteve is a professor in ESADE Business School. He is the Master of Innovation, Master of Data, and I saw the presentation and it's really, really interesting. Esteve, the floor is yours.
Prima di tutto grazie mille signora Eurei, grazie anche all'Università di Firenze e alla Camera di Commercio per l'invito e a EUROCITIES. And also thank you so much for Santtu, Bernadette, Pietro, Alex, all these people that helped me so much in preparing this presentation. This is about urban innovation and how we can make urban innovation in cities, what is the state. I come from this city and the colors are pretty similar to this one, but we don't have the Duomo, neither in my city, Leonardo, or has been born on all these things, so we miss quite a lot of things. My first question is, why do we need innovation in cities? But already has been answered by the Professor André in the University of Florence. I mean, the reality is that before cities were competing a lot in price, in quality, in the cost of the factors, in efficiency, in productivity. Now, cities are competing more and more. In general, organizations are competing more and more on innovation. And innovation is happening in cities. Innovation is not happening anymore outside the cities as it was probably in the decades before. Innovation came to the cities thanks to the digital revolution, thanks to the cloud, thanks to AI, and so on. That's why having innovative cities is probably the only way if we want to sustain our quality level or if we want to do progress. And that's why we need it so much. I'm going to talk about these basic two things, and to whom we collaborate in urban innovation, at the level of the network, the citizens, the ecosystem, and the how. And the how I will talk about three types of methods, or three types of ways to do this collaboration. One is open innovation, and the other is urban labs, and the other is moonshots that now are so much in fashion. And then final words on a few things. This is who, how. Let's start with the who. But before that, you may think that talking about public innovation is like an oxymoron. It's like, wow, these things don't happen. Innovation has to be private. Well, let me remind you two things. I mean, the first is, well, who invented the internet? It was not the private sector. It was the public sector, the one who invented the internet. And then let me steal, because I'm in Italy, and a slide from Mariana Mazzucato that now is working in UCL in London. And this is a slide that shows where all these technologies of the smartphones came from. And if you see, all the technologies from the smartphone were publicly funded. They didn't come from the private industries. They come from the public industries. Some of them from places like CERN, others from the military research, others for like the DARPA, the civil arm of the research, of part of the research in the USA, and so on. But many of them came from the public sector. So the public sector plays a huge role in this innovation and innovation ecosystems. And now we are seeing it more and more in cases like China and the investment that the public sector is doing in innovation in these places. So let's start with the who. And then the first part of the who is the network. We innovate with the network, and the network is these actors that we know. These are the universities, the big industries. These are the network. I put you some examples. One example is an example of universities, and this is an example of an IT and one of the projects on MIT. And this is a very simple project. It says, what will happen if we had ride sharing in cities? If they took New York, and then instead of having just the yellow cars with one passenger, we put 3, 4 more passengers. Well, what happens is that can reduce traffic by 75%. It's a lot. Yes, they put in more people, and then they did some simulations on that. Then they did some simulations, and then you can see the reduction of traffic in Manhattan, and the reduction is really impressive. Just by managing things from a different perspective, in this case, carpooling. In Manhattan, they have around 10,000 yellow cars, and the 10,000 yellow cars are always in the center of Manhattan because they want to have riders, and they crowd Manhattan a lot. That's why they are so interested, but also private companies. And this is a work in Spain of BBVA of 2011, so it's a little bit old. But here we have the a map of the financial transactions that people do with credit cards. And with these financial transactions, we can see how tourists spend their money, how locals spend their money, when and how, and we can also guess the different kind of movement that they have in the cities. We can assess the relative importance of the different cities in Spain and so on. It's a little bit old, it's 2011, but it's an example of collaboration between the private sector and the public sector. In this case, on getting the data and having the data to act. This is becoming more and more important. This was a summary of these financial footprints. Innovating with the network is pretty common. We know the actors. Innovating with the citizens is not so common. It's more new. It's more different. And I put some examples of how to innovate with the citizens. One example of citizen participation is one that we had in Barcelona in a few years. We have a lot of space devoted to cars. Cars occupy a lot of space in the cities, for example, like this thing. Imagine if we can devote this space to other uses that were not cars. How much space we will have left? Here you have no intersections. All this space is devoted to cars. It's a huge amount of space. So one example of Barcelona was the super blocks, trying to find 4 blocks and then putting them together, and then in the middle of the 4 blocks using the space not for cars, but for people. This sounds like a good idea. We had some of it's an idea that has been around in Barcelona for quite some time, in different variations. You have it everywhere, in the centers of the cities. You take one street, and then you make this street without cars. You have different variations of the same thing, but it has been around. And then one of the problems that you have is, what do you do with this space? Because you get suddenly so much space. So what do you do with that? Well, the solution of Barcelona was ask the citizens. Make the citizens decide what they want to do with this space, how they want to use it, and they mount a participatory process. And we had a lot of tries, a lot of different tries on how to do things with the space, from games for the kids to collaborative games to other kind of things. And here you have some of the collaborative process mounted in Barcelona in order to decide what to do with all this space that is becoming available because we don't have cars anymore in these areas of the city. In some cases, it's more or less obvious because you have a lot of bars and restaurants and so on, but in other cases, it's not so obvious. So this is one example. A big example or a big case is how can we reinvent citizenship in the 21st century? This is one important thing. The 21st century is different than the other centuries. We are very much connected and glued to the internet. We are connected to our social networks. Our relationships is not face-to-face as much as it was 100 years ago. So how can we reinvent that? And how can we reinvent the relationship between the citizens and the city hall of the different local authorities in this century? And this is one example that I like very much. This is an example from Boston quite some time ago, but it's a very nice example, and this is Highland in Boston. Well, Highlands are nice. We are all familiar with Highlands, all the movies, all the American movies and so on. They have a small problem. In Boston, it snows, and then happens things like that. And then when this happens, the problem is which hydrants are working and which hydrants are not working. How do you solve that? You cannot go and check thousands of hydrants in a single day. That's impossible. I mean, nobody has the means to do that. So either you have 2 times or 3 times more hydrants than you need, just in case some of them don't work and so on, or you find a way to check them. And there is no possible way from a city hall to solve this kind of problem. So the solution of Boston was, why don't we involve the citizens? And they adopt hydrants. And yeah, they make an app and they let citizens to adopt hydrants. And then if you have a hydrant downstairs, you can adopt 2 hydrants. Then you can put a name and you can have several hydrants. The mechanism was very simple. Once this happens, they send you an SMS and they say, how is your hydrant? They say, it's nice, it's well, it's functioning well. No problem. I say, no, it doesn't work. So instantly, you know which hydrants are working and which hydrants are not working, without using any expenses and just a couple of seconds of citizens that tell you what is working and what is not working. This is the same that we did 100 years ago, but now in digital terms. But it's exactly the same. The whole thing is gamified, so if you don't take care of your hydrants, somebody can steal your hydrant from you. You can have lots of hydrants, and so on and so forth, in order to make it more interesting. But that's the idea. You may think that's a one-shot solution. But, well, in this case, this is Honolulu. In Honolulu, they don't have the problem of snow. It never snows there. And these are no hydrants. These are sirens for tsunamis. What happens with the sirens for tsunamis? Well, pretty much not the same thing, but a similar problem. I mean, they have batteries and people steal the batteries. And of course, sirens without batteries, they don't work. Solution, let's adopt a siren. So this was the solution for Honolulu, and then in Chicago they adopted sidewalks and so on and so forth. And it was a common solution with a common application that it's open source and you share to change the title. This is a way to change and have different meaning for citizenship in the 21st century. But sometimes it's not citizens, it's not the network, but it's something more loose. It's the ecosystem. The ecosystem means innovation hubs, for example, that are very much in function and so on. And this has been one of the successes of Barcelona. It's Pier 1. Pier 1 is in the center of the city, and the success of Pier 1 is that it's privately managed. It's not publicly managed, it's privately managed. They have some public investment, and not so much, but it's privately managed by entrepreneurs from the city of Barcelona. Well, now they are doing the 4th Pier 1. So not the first, not the second, not the third, the 4th Pier 1, that is how successful they did. Also, an important question is, can we have innovative cities without innovating citizens? Without making innovation pervasive to the whole ecosystem? And the answer is, I think not, we cannot. We need innovative citizens if we want to make an innovative city, then how? One of the things is to take the opportunities of technology, and this is the case of our Fab Labs around the city of Barcelona, where it's not only Fab Labs, they also teach programming, STEM, and so on, with methodologies, with programs, language like Scratch, and these kind of things. And this is one example of the open doors done for families, and they also print drones, and they can fly. They can be controlled, which is very nice. The drones are controlled with Arduino, and it's a pretty simple thing. They also do robots and so on. I like very much the photo of the small girl imitating the robot. The most interesting thing is how they did it. It's not what, because what, well, you always have that. Well, they did it with very, very, very little money. And providing the opportunity for collaboration to lots of schools and universities. And in this case, you have more than 100 organizations that were collaborating and thousands of students and thousands of schools that were using these facilities and this service in order to bring the kids for workshops, also business to use the print facilities for printing and doing prototypes with the 3D printing and so on. This capacity of mobilizing the whole ecosystem is something that local authorities can do and probably very few other people can do, because local authorities are not citizens authorities. So we talk a lot about who. Let's talk a little bit about how. And here we have, well, the first thing is open innovation, and how can we bring to collaborate other people from startups, from industries, and so on. And the most important instrument that we have is public procurement. So let me show the last thing in public procurement. This is the Air Force. And the Air Force has a startup demo day, and they invite the startups. And this is the pitch day that was on the January, the 6th of February, the 6th, 7th of March. So it was 2 months ago, I guess, or 1 month ago. Yeah, 1 month ago, more or less, in New York City. And then the idea is very simple. They post problems, like in any startup competition and so on. You pitch your solutions, and they invite you to come and pitch your solutions and so on. And then once you are there, they give you the money in the instant with a credit card swipe. Up to $160,000, you can live with the money. You pitch, they like the idea, you live with the money. No questions. So this is the Air Force. So public procurement is important, but we have to redefine public procurement to a level that we can invite the real innovators like the small startups. This part of the public procurement startups and so on is not for the, of course, it's not for the military secrets, but the Air Force has a lot of work with logistic material. So, for example, how to do preventive maintenance of wheels in the airplanes and things like that, and so on. And this is the type of problems that they want to solve. These are small startups, and these small startups cannot afford to go through a process that lasts months and has a lot of paperwork. And they are not so attractive, or not as attractive as venture capital is. That's why they invented this, you get the money with a credit card swap, with the Air Force credit card swap, which is nice. We also have traditional open innovation, collaboration with companies and startups, and this is another example from Boston. This is the street bump project. And then the street bump project is very simple in Boston, where it snows, and then they have potholes in the street and so on. So the problem is, how can we detect the potholes? Well, one way to detect the ones who know for sure where the potholes are the ones that go to the city with a car, because they suffer the potholes as they come to the city through the car. These are the ones that know that for sure. So they ask the collaboration of the citizens, and then they make an application, and in this application that was an iPhone and Android application and so on, they detect the potholes with the gyroscope. So they not only detect the potholes, they can also prioritize which ones people are encountered more often. And then they can repair it, and then they can use this prioritization. The trick here is, how do you make the software to detect that? And this was done through a traditional open innovation competition website, where somebody used this software, and this software was firstly created for detecting earthquakes. And it was rearranged for detecting potholes, because of course you have to detect the difference between somebody coming into a car and the car encountering a pothole, which is quite some difference. So this is it's again gamified and so on, and then at the end you have a picture when the pothole gets repaired, they send you a picture and they say, thank you so much for helping us to detect and repair the potholes. And this is one of the typical pictures that they send with the process. Sending the picture is very important. Giving feedback is very important. Besides open innovation, we also have urban labs. We also try to create innovation hubs or innovation projects in the cities. And one of these has been challenged. We have been doing that since 10 years in Barcelona. This started in 2008. And the idea was very simple, was why cannot we use the space that we have in cities as a lab, as a test for companies or for people to put products there. We did quite a lot of things, I mean a few hundred of projects, and the idea is threefold. One side of the idea is to test new things, sure. But there are two more things that are as important as testing new things. The second one is to bridge the distance between startups and city halls. The distance many times is huge. By making these competitions and then putting them in contact and so on, you bridge this distance and you cross the distance and you shorten the distance between these two mentalities. And in a way, you make the city hall more innovative and startups more aware that social problems do exist too. And social problems is something that is as interesting as other types of problems. But there is also a third part that is to create an initial demand and to create an initial showcase for these companies. At the end of the day, to try to make them learn or give them the possibility to learn locally to compete globally. And this we thought is important. This is one of the examples. These are leaf, photovoltaic, smoke heaters and so on that you put in the houses. And this is one of the examples, but we have many other examples. Cities have a great opportunity for pilots. I think we have people from Helsinki here, and yeah, and this is the new bus from Muji from Helsinki. That is a self-driving bus, like Uber and so on. That you can call it, and then it's an autonomous bus that goes to Helsinki and so on. Having the opportunity to test these new things that maybe one day are going to be generic to the whole city, it's also a huge opportunity that changes and creates awareness in the mentality of the citizens. This is the second that they have in Helsinki. The first one was with a driver, and this one is without a driver. So that is interesting. And the other part is moonshots. Moonshots are very much in fashion. These big projects. And in moonshots, if you want to highlight one, I think the one in Toronto that Sidewalk Google is doing in Toronto is probably the most interesting and most important one. And this is the new sidewalk of Toronto and so on. Many new things. For example, distribution is below the street in tunnels with robots, with autonomous robots. These are how they think of the distribution inside this quarter. Houses are made of wood. Wood skyscrapers, timber skyscrapers to be more precise. So there are lots of innovative things that these moonshots can bring to cities, and inviting these companies also to try it. It's probably an interesting thing. So we talk a lot about urban innovation, but maybe the buzzwords now, or the most important thing, one of the most important things now is AI. How can we bring AI inside cities? And one important thing is data. And this is a project that was born in Sweden. This is a survey project that has been adopted in many places. And it's a good example of how can we use data. And this is the case of San Francisco, but we have other cases in Europe and so on. Many people die in our streets. Why should people die in our streets in the 21st century? This shouldn't happen. So in the case of San Francisco, it's 30 cyclists that die every year, 200 people seriously injured and so on. So how can we avoid that? Or at least mitigate that? And well, they use data. They have a database with all the injuries, with They have a huge database in cities that provides them the information. And with this database in cities, after using machine learning and so on, they found something that is very common. 70% of the injuries are in 12% of the intersections. San Francisco is not that big, so 12% of the intersections and not so many intersections. It's not a huge city. And then they devise a new way to do the cities, and this is the new way, that it's more or less a copy of what you have in Dutch cities or what you have in North European cities that we use a lot, bikes and so on, protecting the corners and doing safe areas and so on, and they're trying to reduce this death in cities, only with 12% of the intersections that the data shows that where the problem is. To do that, cities lack the capacity. Cities normally lack the capacity of doing machine learning or artificial intelligence. Very few cities have a big capacity on that. And that's why you have data labs. And here you have a pool of different cases of data labs. The California data lab, these are mostly from the US, but we also start to have some of them in Europe and so on. And these data labs provide this opportunity of giving or having machine learning and AI capacities that cities can use and everybody can use without having to invest heavily in AI capacities, which probably is very difficult. You may say there is a dark side to all this thing of AI, and it's true. There is a dark side. And here we have some of the elements that we have in the light side. Things like algorithmic transparency. Let's remember the issue, the Volkswagen and so on, monopolies that are based on network effects, like the ones that we are suffering, that are very difficult to, or excessive value capture done by platforms. Most of the cloud platforms use open source software that is paid by all of us. And they put it and they monetize everything that we already help to build. And or the big challenge of the gig economy, like Airbnb and so on. We are all aware of this dark side. So we cannot forget that there is a dark side and so on. But if we don't understand AI, and we don't understand how can we use AI and cloud in our cities, it will be very difficult to face and combat this dark side. To put a policy for algorithmic transparency, or to try to countervest the negative effects of feedback loops, algorithm feedback loops, or monopolies due to network effects, and so on. So this is the panorama that I wanted to present you, the who and the how, three methodologies, and something new that is coming, that is open innovation. And the three methodologies that I think are important in terms of looking at the network, looking at the actors that are already in place, looking at the citizens. We cannot think of innovative cities without thinking on innovative citizens, and looking at how to mobilize the ecosystem. Not only the major players that we know, but everybody, because the city is something of everybody. Also doing that with these three different approaches: the open innovation, the urban labs, and the moonshots. But let me say one last thing. And this last thing, it's about the administration, it's about city halls. We cannot think of innovative cities without thinking of innovative city halls or innovative administrations. This is a must. If cities have to use data and have to use data wisely, we need also to innovate in city halls. So think about basic things. We need data-driven cities, and we need inside city halls this analytical transformation, algorithmic transparency, embrace cloud, become open source, and collaborate with all of us, because if not, we cannot do medium or big things or medium or big apps. Have governments that are API-based, so they can connect with everybody like modern companies are. And think about new things. I mean, one simple thing: why taxes have to be static, have to be fixed in a world where nothing is fixed? In the world of dynamic pricing, where you have one price today in Amazon and tomorrow you will have another one? Why do you have to pay the same taxes if you are a tourist and you live and you go to the center of the city, or you are a tourist and go on the upper corner of the city? Or you are a tourist and you come as a tourist in January, or you come as a tourist in August. Obviously, the impact on the city is different, and you should pay different taxes. And this has to be rewound. We have dynamic pricing everywhere. We also need dynamic taxes if we want to be effective. So it's a full agenda of what cities have to do. And without having this innovative administration, we are not going to be able to push forward this innovative city that we all need. Grazie mille a tutti.
Okay, perfect. Thank you very much. Thank you very much. We will go in more traditional way, not Wi-Fi, no slider. If you have one, we can take 2 questions to a step. So please, if you have any, raise your hand and Pietro will come to you. No? Okay, perfect. Christian.
There's a question coming into my mind just alongside the last slide you showed about the innovative city administration, and the examples you gave, they were all around technological aspects like cloud solutions, algorithms, data-driven cities.
Mm-hmm.
So that sounds like just use right technology as a key, and then you make the city more innovative. That sounds quite mechanist, no?
Mm-hmm. I'm afraid that no. I mean, if you want to enter in this analytical transformation, the implications are more organizational and cultural than technological. You will have quite a lot on the technology. It's a trigger. At the end of the day, the technology, any technology, enables a kind of relationship between humans, kind of organization that you have. A change of technology enables new possibilities, and then, but the sizing these new possibilities and these opportunities is not for the technology, it's for us. It's us how we have to define and challenge. The same thing of citizenship in the 21st century. Now we have social networks and so on. The ones that we have to reinvent citizenship in this century using all these technologies is not the technology. The technology is not going to do that. It's us who have to do that. And this is the basic transformation. I think it's a huge challenge for public institutions to reinvent themselves and use wisely all these new opportunities in a creative new ways to change the organization inside and the cities outside.
One more question from Sylvia.
Oh, thank you.
Thank you very much for your presentation. It's a question and a comment, and it's really following up from this discussion. At the end of your presentation, you raised this issue of we need to use the technology. And I think that the technology somehow is there and is easy to get it. The main issue for the city is to become responsive. You know, there's a lot of discussions about smart cities. Smart cities is not just about technology, it's about being responsive to the needs and the challenges of the local population, business, investors, whatever. And I think that this is the transformation that we need to make at local level to be able to become innovative, smart, competitive, and everything. I think the concept of being responsive should really be put in the model, because it's really about the human factors in cities, how we train public administration, how we set up a new business model in public administration. And I was wondering if you read something about the Charles Laundry concept of creative bureaucracy, because it really should be put in this wider model for innovative cities. Thank you.
Yeah. No, I completely agree that the need of being responsive and so on. I would like to add 2 things only. I mean, public administrations are not only responsive to the demands of the citizens, they create a new society. They are the motor of this new society. And we have to let them also to be this motor of new society and create the new society that we all want, not only respond to these needs of the citizens. And this is as important as being responsive. The second part is that technology is available up to a point. I don't know, for example, if you want digital sovereignty in Europe, you want to have a cloud platform because you need a cloud platform, and you don't want a cloud platform that is connected to the private cloud in Europe and so on, but you want another platform that you have a complete control in Europe and so on. We don't have that. Americans have that. There is an Amazon.gov that is completely separated and controlled by the American administration. Chinese have that. Europeans don't have that. So we need also some action in terms of technology, in terms of policies, and in terms of digital sovereignty if we want to ensure that our privacy and the rights of our citizens is not that things are there, available, and so on. We have to fight for them. I completely agree with you, of course. Any more questions? Or comments? Or whatever.
André to Helsinki, it's very interesting when you speak about Americans and Chinese and so on. Can you elaborate a little bit? How do we, as Europeans, compete with the rest of the world?
Kiitos. Well, it's really complicated, I think, for Europeans to compete. I think the easiest way to say it is that in AI we lost this competition. We don't compete. It's a competition among two wars. One is the American war, and the other is the Chinese war. In AI, the investment in China is 150 billion euros for the next 10 years, more or less. We don't have, some countries, like Germany and so on, have an AI strategy. Europe doesn't have an AI strategy. So we don't compete. In terms of the public sector, the situation is even worse because we don't have a cloud. If you want to put a government cloud that is on the hands of the European citizens, we don't have that. And this is basic. If you want to keep the data of European citizens in the hands of European citizens, and so on and so forth. So we really need a European strategy on all these areas. And the European strategy has to be global, Europe-wide. We don't have no country has the capacity to put their own strategy and a strategy on their own. And this is true for that, but it's also true in terms of algorithmic transparency, that companies are relying on algorithms more and more and more and more, and we don't have a clue of which algorithms are. These algorithms can be discriminatory, these algorithms can be many things, and well, authorities need to know that, have to be able to inspect that. And right now we don't. We are completely blind in these things. So there is a huge space of new laws, new regulations, but also of implementing technology in Europe if we want to put the basis for technological sovereignty in Europe, or at least respond to the demand of sovereignty for our citizens. Unfortunately, is that.
So thank you very much, Estelle.
Sorry, another question. Thank you so much for your presentation. It was wonderful. You said a very interesting thing, the involvement of citizens, which is very, very important. And you showed us some micro examples, the bump one, the hydrants, and so forth. The question is, are you aware of some ongoing mechanism by means of which some city engage constantly citizens? Because this is the point. I mean, right now you can engage them on some specific things that can be interested in them, like the bumps, but the true secret is to try to also hear from us. Most of the time, cities have to follow the digital agenda, the national agenda, whatever agenda, not the citizen agenda. So are you aware of some example? And if not, what would you consider the best mechanism to engage in a constant way, ongoingly, the citizens? Thank you.
Thank you so much for the question. It's a subject that we don't know much. I mean, all companies now, because of the data revolution, compete with the attention of the citizens. Having a piece of this attention, it's complicated. And then it's easy to engage the citizens when the subject matters a lot. A case of a very specific problem that really matters to a certain type of community. But this is rare. Many of the things that happen in cities, they don't matter so much to the majority of the population if the city is moderately well run. If the city is a complete disaster, maybe, but if more or less well run, the level of interest that you can raise from citizens from specific areas is not that important. People are very busy with their own lives. So we have a lot of projects, a lot of tries. The CIDIM is the last one in Barcelona and so on to engage the citizens. Lots of problems always with these projects. Group thinking dominated by small, very active groups and so on that makes them sometimes not representative of what they think. This lacks many of these projects. Private companies have been quite successful in capturing this attention. In case of Facebook and so on, public companies don't. It's still something that we lack how to do it well. We have some tries, and sentiment analysis is something that many cities use in order to capture but sentiment analysis, it's very limited. It's only to the people who express the sentiment, and these are normally people that are more on the extremes, and you don't capture the ones in the middle. So it's also a complicated way to engage this perception. This is one of the areas of reinventing citizenship in the 21st century. It's one of the areas that we have to work more. My answer is that we don't know that much. We know very few tries, and we know all the problems associated with all these very few tries, but not a perfect solution for this problem, unless it's a problem that really worries a lot community, and then on which you can pivot much of the attention of some people and so on. It's a continuous way. It seems to be complicated.
We have last question, and Christian, please be short, and Esteve, please be short.
Okay, very short. So just two remarks. The first one, I would tend to disagree on the idea that the EU doesn't have a strategy about AI, and first of all, because we are coming from a period in which we are redesigning the 2021-2027 framework program, and it seems to me that we are giving some directionality to innovation, and all the work that Mariana Mazzucato is doing and Pascal Lamy. So I think that we do have a competitive advantage against these two walls that you called it. So it's nice. It's the fact that we can design products and programs that are based on social, environmental, sustainability goals. And so I think that that's the other element is that as opposed to the US and China, we are working a lot on human rights in AI. And in fact, we have there's a terrific work that the high-level expert group has carried out on human rights, human ethics in AI. So I think that's something that on which Europe, and cities especially, because they are the ones that can really deliver some of the services that give access to the exercise of human rights through AI as well. So I think, what's your take on that would be nice to hear.
Grazie mille. No, I agree with you that there is a lot of thinking in Europe, particularly on the ethical side. It's mostly European. And I completely agree that there is a lot of thinking on this area in Europe and so on. Many times when you talk about there is a strategy or not, you reduce things to numbers. And then you say, well, it's a Chinese strategy. Well, 150 billion 10 years. That's a strategy. And then when you talk about the US, there is a strategy. Well, you have the 6 big companies, the Google, the Facebook, and so on, and all AI products that we use more or less come from these big 6 companies. And we refer not that there is no thinking, there is a lot of thinking and so on. We refer of the amount of money, the amount of human power, the amount of products coming from European institutions and coming from a European political will. We don't have this amount of money, and we don't have these six big companies, or the 3 big companies that we have that the Chinese have, the Baidu, the Tencent, and Alibaba, and so on. We lack all these mass. The ones that we have are linked to one of these 2 worlds, to the American one, and the one was bought by Google, and now it's part of Google, and so on, and so on and so forth. So this is what we mean by this. Of course, there is a lot of thinking. We have the money to put this thinking into practice, and the money in such amount, in such quantity that allow us to compete with some hope that we can make a difference. And that's why I say it's not that there is not a lot of thinking, there is a lot of thinking.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you so much.
Thank you very much. And now I will give the floor to our moderator of the panel debate, Simone D'Antonio, URBACT expert, journalist, and he will be in charge of you by lunchtime. So Simone, the floor is yours. Yeah.
Thank you very much. I ask to the speakers to join me here. I ask to Cecilia, Deputy Mayor for Economic Development and Tourism of Florence, André Sobczak, Vice President of Nantes Metropole and Chair of the Economic Development Forum, Santtu from Bruun, Deputy Mayor for Innovation of Helsinki, Fabrizio, Colimberti, Policy Officer at DG Research and Innovation of the European Commission, and Javier Gomez, Scientific Officer on Urban Development at Joint Research Center of the European Commission to join me here for this session. There are enough chairs for everybody, so we can sit where we want. It's like the game chairs, the musical chairs. Welcome to the panel debate on how to develop local innovation ecosystem. As you know, cities are the places where most of the challenges of our time are happening, and fostering innovation and economic development is one of the most important challenges of our time. Local governments act as brokers of innovation, making cities enabling platforms for startups, innovators, small and medium enterprises willing to cooperate for creating social and economic development. But at the same time, the local governments play also a key role in connecting different local innovation ecosystems in different cities at European and global level. So at local level, we see that new models of collaborations between the public sector, the private sector, the local communities are emerging, and local authorities need to be prepared for this, to be active players in this dynamic, and elected representatives, civic officials need to have new tools to understand this dynamics and animate the cooperation among all these players. So what we are going to do today is to explore the different strategies that cities followed to promote and foster local innovation ecosystems, but also the current and future challenges of the sector and how European Union and cities can collaborate to promote integrated urban development. I will start with Cecilia. She is Deputy Mayor for Economic Development here in Florence. In a national context of slow recovery from crisis, why Florence can be considered as an exception, and how Florence is fostering the collaboration between the public and private sector?
So, as we said, Florence is a peculiar city with a strong Renaissance tradition, but we are experiencing also a very significant change from the technological point of view, and also from the infrastructures. And it's our responsibility to look for innovation in order to face the challenges posed by the economic environment of the territory. Last year, we set up an agreement with the stakeholders dealing with innovation in Florence, aimed to achieve a synergic activities to stimulate the development of Florence innovation ecosystem. The partners are both private and public, and the aim is common: to create fertile ground for the arrival of new business in the city and to ensure that the various existing projects do not overlap but complement and reinforce each other. Another example of collaboration between public and private sector is we can find in the tourism sector, because we signed an agreement to support the Congress sector and to promote the quality of tourism between the municipality of Florence, the metropolitan city, the Chamber of Commerce and the University of Florence, in order to implement shared actions and optimize efforts and resources to enhance the sector of tourism, in order also to delocalize tourist flows. We are looking for a private group, for a private subject that can help us in doing this. So, we are making a team in order to help also our city to sustain and improve citizen quality of life, because tourists must be an opportunity for our cities and not a problem. But we have every year 14 million of tourists in Florence, and so we have to be able, also with the help of private sector, to delocalize these tourists and also to help other territories around Florence to receive these tourists. So we are really making a collaboration between public and private in order to improve our quality life.
It's also collaboration with other public actors around Florence, which is really important, and it's really original in the Italian landscape. What about Nantes? What are the main actors of the local innovation ecosystem, and how the city is fostering the collaboration with them and among them?
Yeah, what we do in Nantes is very similar, and I found also a lot of things that have been presented in the keynote speech that we also do in Nantes as well. So I think there's also a common way of today to recognize again the role of public actors and of cities in the field of innovation, which maybe was not the case 10 or 20 years ago, where we thought that it was indeed a responsibility only of the private sector. So we do similar things in order to bring together the different stakeholders. What is also important for us in Nantes is the fact that we don't see innovation or economic development as an end in itself. It has to be in line with our political strategy. So we are very much engaged in the different transitions, environmental transition, social transition, creating jobs and so on, and we try to explain to our citizens that everything that we invest in innovation will have a concrete impact on the local level, which is important. I was struck by the presentation when it was said that the iPhone, for example, actually it was to a huge extent invented thanks to publicly funded innovation, and today we all know that it's not always the case, even that these kind of companies pay their taxes. So there's also a question of what is the impact of the investment we make in innovation, and we have to be sure, I think, towards our citizens that something comes back to the ground, be it in terms of jobs or better social or environmental conditions, for example. So this is what we try to do. We also have this idea with working together with the region around us, because we don't want to see our city as selfish and just bringing the added value to the city. We also have to interact, and it's also, of course, the political debate currently in France and other parts between the rich cities and the poorer areas around them, which cannot be a solution for the future. So we have to do this, and what we did is we need to identify certain sectors which are important for us. So here you can see them. We have identified together with the private and public actors in our region certain areas that reflect our values and our strengths, and also that are linked to the different transitions that we want to influence. So you can see that we work a lot on industries. We are quite lucky in Nantes to have quite a lot of industries even within the city, which is not so usual, and it has been seen as a problem for many times because of course there is an environmental impact also on this. But on the other hand, it also guarantees our people to get jobs, and also in all kinds of fields. We don't want Nantes to be only a city for people that work in the innovation sector that are very high skilled. We also need to offer jobs for everybody, and industries, it's something which is very important where we want to invest, be it on aerospace and the maritime sector. And then everything which is linked to health. In the city of Nantes, we are currently developing a new university hospital. It's the biggest university hospital in France that is being built currently, and around this we want to develop a whole economic sector about health and to link it with the food sector, because Nantes has a long tradition of the food sector, and we are convinced that we can create bridges between health and food, which also would be an original point of view. We don't think that we can compete with other European cities on having the best companies, on a lot of research on the best medicine, for example, but we can think that food can be a driver for having more health also for the people, so creating these bridges. And then we have two transversal areas that are also important, that are in line with our values, so the link with the culture and creativity industries, which is very important, and the digital sector, that we see not really as a sector as themselves, but more as something which is transversal, which we try to develop. And all this we try to do it again in cooperation with also the regional level, because as a French city you could say that innovation and economic development, it's not really up to us to decide on it. It's more from a legal point of view the responsibility of the region, but we are convinced that we need to play our role. We have a strength, and we can really contribute to innovate on all these different levels.
And then also the way you transformed some former industrial buildings, such as the former biscuit factory, the Lou, that became the Unique, which is one of the most interesting cultural hub, I think, in France and in Europe. So it's a good example of how creative industries are really a relevant part of the economic future of Nantes. In Helsinki, Santtu, what are the most characteristic elements of the local innovation ecosystem, and how the collaboration among the different actors is managed in some way also by the public sector? What is the role that the city is having in this process?
Okay, thank you. Just to start with, it's an honor to be called Vice Mayor. Unfortunately, I'm the Vice Director of Economic Development, responsible for urban innovation and ecosystem development.
We wish you in the future will become Vice Mayor.
Our Vice Mayor is somewhere in here or arriving soon. But Helsinki, Finland has always been a very innovative place. If you look at the development of Finland in the last 100 years, it's a story of innovation from one of the poorest countries in the world or in Europe to become one of the most prosperous countries in Europe and the world, currently ranking third most innovative country in the world. And it is really a story of social innovation, basically that of equal education. And if you look at the innovation ecosystem in Helsinki at the moment, the basis is still the same. It is very much about high-class education, equal opportunities for all, trust. It is very much a trust-based society, and without this one, you can't really have an ecosystem. It is all based on people. It is all based on talent. Once you have the talent, you can start building an environment or an ecosystem where innovation happens. And doesn't seem to be working. Anyways. Yep. Okay. Perfect. And what we're doing is, or have been doing it for quite a while now, is moving from narrow traditional innovation policies towards open innovation policy and something that is focusing on building an ecosystem. Currently, there's an estimate that 96% of global innovation are made in ecosystems, no longer within single organizations. And what we look at is three layers or focus areas in this one. One is the open city, which is how city functions towards its citizens and towards corporations within the city. It is very much about empowering citizen-led development. It is engaging citizens in innovation via living labs and so on. Another one is building an open innovation ecosystem. That is looking at the city as an organism, looking at what kind of actors we have, how those cooperate, and then if there's something missing, we can help create something there, or we can breed a culture or a way of operating so that we bring together the city, the academia, and the private organizations and the companies. And for the third one is building city as a platform. This, I think, is one of the most challenging and at the same time most important part of how cities can help innovation. And we do this by leveraging all our assets, basically infrastructure and services, in a way that promote innovation and commercialization of innovation. This can be innovative procurement, hackathons, challenges, innovation platforms where we open services for companies to come and test their products, get their first commercial touch, get the feedback, does their innovation work, so that they can show that their innovation really works in real environment. Of course, we try to offer market references for companies. And basically, the idea is to make Helsinki world's leading testbed for innovation. We know that if we look at the innovation on a global level, we will never be the end market. We are far too small city and far too small country. But we can be the place where the innovation and the products can be tested in a real environment and then being commercialized wider into Europe and the world. Of course, there's a significant difference between Helsinki and most of the cities in Europe. That is that Helsinki's responsibilities are much wider. We're responsible for things that are usually in Europe on a regional level or even on national level. We're responsible for education at the university level, most of the healthcare, and at the same time, the city of Helsinki still owns things like energy company and one of the biggest harbors in Europe, which we also try to use as platform for innovation. And instead of just waiting for innovation to happen, to take a really active part in the ecosystem and in creating open innovation, the role of the city has to be something very different than it used to be. So what we see is that we take multiple roles in enabling and even driving innovation. One of them, very often forgotten, is that we are a very neutral operator. We don't have usually a business interest in single company or single technology. So we can be the one that connects academia and different kinds of companies and brings them together. Second, of course, we are very often enabler. We offer the test beds and testing opportunities. We also drive innovation. We offer innovation fund. The City of Helsinki has had an innovation fund for over 10 years. So far spent over 40 million euros for different kinds of innovative projects within city organization or in the wider ecosystem. Our city organization does a lot of R&D. For example, the Helsinki Energy Company is one of the most R&D intensive energy companies in Europe. Testing, developing a lot of vanguard technologies are not yet commercially viable, but they still test them. Sometimes also we do regulation. Companies don't like regulation, but sometimes regulation is a great tool for creating innovation. You force companies to adapt into a new kind of an environment. Of course, we look at the ecosystem. If we see that we miss something very important from the ecosystem, we can build it or attract actors to build it. For example, last few years we've been building a place called Maria 01, which is one of the biggest startup hubs or incubators in Europe, run by private people who come from private companies, but simply enabled. They're a lot better at actually managing what happens in there, but we just enable it and make it happen, or help make it happen. We run a think tank, which is called Forum Virium, roughly 50 people, just purely focusing on digital innovation and creating digital platforms in the city. It's one of the European forerunners in urban open data and IoT solutions. And one very interesting tool we use is called the quick experimentation programs. All of our divisions make calls for new innovations. Small companies to come and show their product. So this year we tested 50 or 60, last year we tested 50 or 60 different kinds of technologies and solutions from small startups. If all goes great, we get a great view on what's happening in the ecosystem, what are the new technologies. We can then proceed with a big procurement, or we can say to the company, nice idea, didn't work, go innovate something else. It's a great tool for developing ecosystem.
Yeah, I really suggest to go through the initiatives incubated in the Forum Virium, which is one of the most interesting platforms that we have in Europe, in terms also of support to startups, innovators using open data. So it's something really, really interesting and inspiring for other cities too. But the support of the European Union is decisive to foster innovation in cities. I asked to Fabrizio Colimberti to tell us more about how this support evolved in the last few years in the framework of different programs such as Horizon 2020, GPI Urban Europe, and how this framework will be included in the next programming period.
Hello. Thank you, first of all, for the invite. Thanks to EUROCITIES and the Chamber of Commerce. Yes, indeed. The thinking is evolving, and we are at the watershed moment as the next framework program for research innovation was approved last week. So in my presentation, I will talk about two things. First of all, the work that we are doing at the Directorate General for Research and Innovation on what innovation in cities will mean in the next, say, 5 to 10 years. And then second of all, what it means for the next framework program, which is Horizon Europe, which is the continuation of Horizon 2020, which I'm sure you're all somewhat familiar with. So I think the reflection so far today shows how difficult innovation is. We all know this. How complex the challenges we have in Europe and globally, small cities, large cities. Don't forget that we as Commission, we care for the best in class. Some of the people are sitting at this panel. We also care for much smaller cities and more different realities. So what we are doing at the moment is working with a high level of external experts to define what innovative cities for the future can mean in innovation and how to support that. The challenges, we know them, first of all, listening to citizens more and more, quite simply, continue listening to business industry, and understand what are the choices we're facing. Second of all, the negative impacts, whether they're from climate change or globalization or societal changes. So what we have done is last year we started a long journey which will help us formulate this strategic research and innovation agenda. Why we need that is quite simple. In Horizon 2020, 3.1 billion euros went to city projects, went to municipalities essentially. In the next framework program, there will be even more funds, most likely. So we conveyed a number of experts, basically trying to put together the various fields from mobility, energy efficiency, climate change, inclusion, innovation, and so on. The report has been presented last week at the European Parliament, at least the draft of the report, which I'll show in a second. Very, very important for us to recognize that the landscape, and I think this was touched upon in keynote speeches, the landscape is very fragmented. This makes it all very, very difficult. From the Paris Agreement, UN actions, to the Sustainable Development Goals, to the Goal 11, which is one of the guiding principles we're following. We also have a number of more bottom-up initiatives from Fab cities and Fab labs and so on. And we have some coordinated actions by cities in Europe, which 10 years ago, the Covenant of Mayors, for example, were, to some extent much newer. And we have very strong networks like EUROCITIES, which is helping us. We had 2 people which helped craft the report. Cecilia from EuroCities a few moments ago was mentioning Charles Landry, which is the madman, in a very positive way, that leads the movement for the creative bureaucracy, and which has helped shape the report. The approach that has been undertaken is basically the one to shift to a human-centered city. Essentially, this means one thing. It's basically putting the individual at the center of any actions that guides innovation. And we believe it's quite an interesting way and very useful way to move past the, let's call them trends of talking about green cities 15 years ago, smart cities 5 years ago, artificial intelligence and other trends, which is very, very important today. And this probably, we hope, will guide us towards a more horizontal and all-encompassing approach. There are 2 critical issues which have been set at the very center, at the very heart of the report. And they're related to urban infrastructure. The first is decarbonization, taking into account the 1.5 maximum global temperature increase. And the second is circularity and sharing. The Commission is promoting very, very hard a bio-circular approach to economy. This means, very practically, that the strategic priorities, and I know this is getting very, very theoretical, I can read it on your faces, but this is what will help us writing the calls for the projects for which you will apply for. So this is why I'm showing this to you. This means that there will be a number of priorities. Building resilience, I think the JPI, Urban Europe, talks about robust cities. We want to future-proof them. People were talking about skills within the public administration without, for example. A lot will be about institutional capacity and stuff, and how to engage citizens, which is also one of the trends that within Horizon have been growing over the years. Prosperity is what we think of when we think of city riches, in a way that putting the individual at the center gives the opportunity not only to talk about business per se, but also talk about the sort of more creative, cultural, the distribution of opportunities, trying to allocate more fundings to the way that the influx of migrants, refugees comes into a city. And then finally, governance is another very important aspect. Again, I think this is very solid in a way in Horizon 2020. There is a lot of talk about co-creation. There is a lot of talk about experimenting governance models, and I think some of the previous speakers talked about their experience in this regard. Connecting to public innovation movements is something that I think we will be looking at more and more. And then finally, hopefully, the idea of measuring impact and moving beyond GDP. So really looking at how individuals can be fulfilled, can fulfill themselves within cities.
Could you just briefly explain what you mean by connect public innovation movement?
Yes, it means that there are a lot of grassroots movements, the Fab City manifestos and so on. One of the logics of the report is there is a lot of things happening, sprawling here and there in Europe, 100 resident and globally, 100 resident cities, for example, covenants. So, I think the great challenge which we have as Commission and that you have as cities is to bring these movements together, is to make sure that whatever model you propose comes to us and is something that can be looked at together, as opposed to a fragmentation that is natural because all these initiatives, ideas are to some extent bottom up. So the idea is that we will try to help support that sort of, if you want, rationalization in a way. I already touched upon Horizon Europe, and I think I already spoke too long, but one important point from this, the R9 actions, research innovation actions in the urban field will be funded across the board from many different pockets of Horizon. Expect a lot from the Cluster 4 Climate, Energy and Mobility. This is different from Horizon 2020, where I think mobility and climate were disjoint. And then do expect to hopefully see a more integrated approach between various disciplines. And finally, help us. This is a classic call for help, which I think it's our duty to do. In the past, Horizon 2020 has followed sometimes a too much top-down approach, in the sense that we have wrote, I see some people nodding, we have wrote things, we have wrote calls for which we thought this is what could be good for cities, this is what the future, how we read the future. The idea for Horizon Europe is to have a more participatory process, and I will talk about that in a second.
Thank you so much, Fabrizio. So it's great to hear that in the economic period the attention on cities will be higher and higher, but the attention on people is the most interesting thing that is defining the future framework for cohesion policy, and I think also for research and development policy. Javier Gomez, you studied strongly smart specialization and you're working on it with Joint Research Center. How smart specialization is contributing to differentiate the local ecosystems and why it's a relevant opportunity for our cities?
Thanks, Simone, and thanks to the colleagues of EUROCITIES for organizing this wonderful workshop. Grazie mille anche ai colleghi di Firenze, bella Firenze come sempre. I'm going to explain about the activity of my unit, the Joint Research Center, basically in the framework of cities from the territorial development point of view, and also regards to smart specialization. So before going to the smart specialization, I've been asked to tell some arguments explaining why we should develop local ecosystems for the promotion of innovation. And I think that one of the key arguments is actually knowledge. The graph actually shows how at the JRC we work as a scientific service of the European Commission by providing policy advice to the progress of several policies, like, for example, agriculture, energy, cohesion policy, and so on. So it is true that we are in a modern days in which information and data is really abundant, but we have to move up in the pyramid towards actually capturing what is knowledge. And you see that actually at the JRC, for example, there is a lot of interactions with several stakeholders and policymakers, and our key challenge is actually to manage that knowledge. And I think this is pretty much what is happening or what should happen thanks to local innovation ecosystems, because the knowledge can come not only from public administration, not only from universities or research centers, but also from citizens. So I think that policymakers should promote inclusiveness in the way of addressing innovation, participatory approach, and obviously governance. My colleague Fabrizio referred that before. So, concretely speaking, in the issue of cities, these are the two of the main latest activities in our unit. The first one is the flagship report called The Future of Cities. This has been actually a very interactive way of working with not only colleagues of the Commission, but also other stakeholders. For example, just at the GRC we have engaged about 11 working groups on actually taking what is happening in terms of research for illustrating what is happening in the cities. And we do that actually through the community of practice. That is two co-creation processes, working together as, for example, what we are doing and what we are going to develop in the afternoon, because that is the main input for the activities. So this is the example of how we interact with the production of the flagship report of the Community of Cities. This report will be available in June, we expect. And you can see that there's been a lot of interactions. And the same, obviously, when you develop local ecosystems for innovation, should apply engaging as many as possible actors to capture actually the most of knowledge. This is the flagship report. In this report, you will find the cities studied from different angles, from the perspective point of view, from the challenges. There is a chapter particularly addressing the issue of innovation. Innovation that actually we should consider in a very broader way than technological one, because innovation can be applied at social levels, innovation in the procedures, innovation in public administration, and so on. And yeah, this has been a very collaborative approach, and I expect that you interact with us, because there will be, apart from the report, there will be a virtual portal in which we can actually enrich the contents of this report. And the idea is to become a urban observatory. So this is another subproduct of actually the Knowledge Center of Territorial Policies. Through this Stratboard tool, we develop analysis of more than 1,000 strategies for urban development across Europe. And here you can have a lot of information, like, for example, funding or specific investments in issues like innovation, or elements like smart specialization as well. And actually, talking about smart specialization, my unit has vast experience in promoting the discovery of innovation at regional level. Toscana, for example, has been a very active region in the activities we promote. We have a platform reference for interactions and for the promotion of peer learning activities among the regions. And it appears because for those who are not familiar with smart specialization, here we don't talk about actually the smart side as a technical one, like smart cities or smartphones or smart whatsoever. But smart is more from the sense of the policy point of view, from how you address policies for the promotion of innovation. It's been very massive application of smart specialization, because there has been regulation behind of the cohesion policy that actually pursues that all the regions implement a strategy of smart specialization. And it's smart because actually you are not investing in everything. You have to concentrate efforts and investment in specific elements. You have to do it through inclusive processes. You have to do it by establishing dialogue with several actors. And decisions should be taken perhaps in a more slow process, but more effectively. And specialization, because actually you specialize in the niches of innovation that have been discovered in the local territories or in the regions. And I would say also, before the professor was telling about the competition among cities in the world, but I would raise also the issue of cooperation, because applying the logic of smart specialization, the more you specialize are in a region, the more need for cooperating with others. And we apply also in our methodologies our way of working with the regions, global value chains approach. So The idea is to specialize in something, to discover niches of innovation with your own resources, but also to connect these specializations with other peers, not only in Europe, but also in the world. And that's it.
Thank you, Javier. So we saw that so much is happening in Brussels, so much happening in our cities, but I asked to all the speakers, what are the most relevant changes that we saw in the last 5-10 years to local innovation strategies, and how these strategies will change in the medium, long term, so in the next 10-15 years? I ask you to keep your answers in 1 minute so we can have more exchanges and leave also some space for the questions from the audience.
We consider big data and digital tools an important instrument that local innovation strategies began to explore in the last years. Public administration is going more and more digital day by day, and thanks to open data, for example, it's now possible in Florence to know in real time how many people are in a specific area in that moment, allowing policymakers to guide our visitor toward less congested areas. On medium-long term, I expect that strategies using the source of big data will be implemented based on an ethical value responding to the citizen needs with the respect of privacy indication. Concerning the digitalization of public administration, I predict an expansion of the network of the so-called digital trainers. For example, in Florence, we have started some trainers in order to be inclusive and to give everyone the possibility to take advantage of the innovation we promote. And so we have activated a training course aimed in particular at newsstands and local pharmacies for the use of digital tools offered by the municipality of Florence and Tuscany region. So we are working on the creation of a new digital newsstand. In a time where the newspaper crisis forced these places to rethink their identity, we imagine the newsstand as a service center to respond to the needs of citizens in a widespread manner.
Thank you. André?
I think what has changed over the last 5 to 10 years is really that now the cities and public actors in the cities are considered as legitimate to talk about innovation and to play a role in coordinating the different stakeholders, which was not maybe the case in the past. So I think it's a good achievement. And then what has changed also for us is that now we are quite clear about the sectors where we want to intervene, as I mentioned before. So the challenge now will really be to implement all this, and I would like to highlight one particular element, which is the link with universities and higher education. Because there again, in France at least, cities usually are not seen as actors that are working with higher education or financing higher education. So our mayor made a commitment to double the funding for the university in the city of Nantes and higher education, even if it's not our main competence according to national laws, because we really think that we need to work with higher education, and this additional funding helped us really to create more links, because we conditioned it in the fact that we want to work more on innovation with these different actors. And in particular, our university and higher education experts are quite strong in the field of social skills and management about how to implement innovation. We don't think that we can only contribute on the technical side, on the digital elements, but we really would like to see what is the human side of all these innovations. And we have a lot of resources in the academic sector in Nantes, so it's really about how we can establish this link and make also academics change their mindsets and think that they are not only there in order to do excellent research, but also to see how it can be really embedded in the local ecosystems.
Thank you. Santtu?
As we are apparently competing on innovation, I'm not sure I should tell you, but I think one of the biggest changes, at least in Helsinki, is if you look at from 10 years to now, is the role of innovation in the city strategy. 10 years ago, it really wasn't there. It was in economic development strategy, but not on the actual city strategy. 5 years ago, we started pushing the idea of the city as a platform and city as an innovation enabler towards the city strategy. In the new city strategy from about a year ago, it is now one of the core elements of the whole city strategy, the whole city as a platform for innovation. So that I think is very important change, and I think we've all heard the meme or the quote that culture eats strategy for lunch, and certainly does in cities. 5 years, 6 years ago, if we approach our different divisions and say, we would like you to test this one, or would you be willing to talk with this company on how their product would fit in your division? It was usually, no, it's expensive, can't really happen, maybe some other time. It wasn't really part of the culture. Now we're actually approaching a situation that we have, the divisions are too interested in doing innovation, we have far too many companies approaching us, and we are now starting to be swamped in the process. So it's really become part of the culture. And I think it's the most important part, because it doesn't, if you're writing strategy after the strategy, it takes 10 years to actually make it a culture. That I think is the biggest change. The other thing which we are now doing on the strategy level is more focusing on development ecosystem. No, I don't mean the whole city as an ecosystem, but more like technological ecosystem. So instead of a pilot or a test on a single technology, we try to combine a lot of different technologies and different pilots and also citizen interaction into bigger platforms. For example, there was in the professor's presentation, there was the Muji autonomous bus in Helsinki. That is a really nice single technological test. But what we're actually doing is that we are building an urban mobility lab which encompasses autonomous vehicles, 5G solutions, urban sensors, air quality sensoring, simulation models, and citizen interaction for creating new kinds of products. So bundling, creating, because exporting a single technology is super difficult. You need more of an ecosystem that can create a real product and then export it. The third one is, I think, very interesting is the global realization that cities are or can be key players in local and even in global innovation. We see a lot more big corporations approaching cities to try to build cooperation, but also cities are now building networks of innovation. For example, in Finland, the core one is which we call the 6 city strategy. It is basically 6 biggest cities in Finland cooperating, creating projects and innovation platforms to grow scale, to create bigger markets for innovations and new products.
Thank you. Fabrizio?
It's very hard to follow André and Santtu because they both said very, very right things.
You have 1 minute, so you don't have that.
Well, luckily they said lots of great things, which I completely agree with. I hear, still today, innovation is the poor child of the family. And yes, 10 years ago didn't exist. Today, in some Nordic cities, it is more ingrained, it's in the culture. In some other cities, I'm afraid it's still not. What I think for the future, the way to try to bridge that gap is possibly to focus on the social dimension of innovation. And that is both looking at the third sector, somebody was talking about the social dimension in that way earlier today, but also at the social impact. Don't get me wrong, new technologies are absolutely important, absolutely essential. Blockchains can do marvelous things from large cities and very small cities. But I was talking the other day to the innovation officers of a very large and very rich cities in Western Europe, which were telling me we have this wonderful strategy for having shared bicycles paid by the municipality. We put lots of money into that, lots of time and resources, and now we have a lot of corporates and banks and what have you that do the same thing. The issue is how are we going to be able to foresee that development in the future so that we put our money and resources in the right channel.
Thank you. Javier?
In terms of changes, I would highlight the easy and the rapid access to information and communication technologies as a positive way to see actually what is happening in other places. We co-authored and study actually social innovation recently, and there is an issue when you address innovation. You cannot pretend that innovation be a similar element happening in all territories. Each territory has to apply actually their own dynamics and interaction with local actors. And, this is an element also of identity that actually can link or can be linked with, for example, creative industries and things like that. And in terms of challenges, I would say that it is interesting to see also from the research point of view how to measure innovation, because just talking about social innovation, you mentioned, for example, that you organize hackathons, that perhaps the way you organize hackathons in your city is not the same that organizing hackathons here in Florence. So we should play with that and to put the research eye and to advise policies accordingly.
Thank you, but in view of the next programming period, what cities need from the European Union and how the European Union can help cities in delivering integrated local innovation strategies? Always in 1 minute.
We expect from Europe support for actions towards cities' sustainability, to funding assistance, action, fostering a dialogue among European cities, and to provide opportunities for cooperation, thus implementing networking actions. We just heard yesterday that we won an Interreg Europe project on crafts, about crafts, and we applied for this project just because as you know, Florence is famous all over the world for our craftsmen, for our artisans, and we are applying also to be a UNESCO Creative Cities for Artisans. But we applied this project in order to discover, to face a very important problem, that is the risk of the disappearance of these crafts, of the old techniques that made Florence so famous all over the world. For this, we applied in order to face and to discover new techniques that can innovate this sector and that can explore the contamination between the new technologies and the techniques used by the artisans. So they need to be helped in this new world and also in new markets. For this example, we are sure that this project can help our cities and our small and medium enterprise to find a new way to also to support their products and to innovate their techniques.
André?
Yes, I think that what we expect from the European Union is really to be involved, as you mentioned, even more upfront in defining the new projects and the new research programs, because it's very important that we can not only reply to public tenders, but that we can influence them from the very beginning. And I think we are on the right way right now, and EUROCITIES has done a lot in order to strengthen us and to give us more voice from the very beginning. And maybe the other expectations we could have as cities is also about helping us to consider the investments we make in these kind of innovation projects compatible with the budgetary rules we have in the European Union, because we can see also that more and more also from our national governments we have a lot of pressure about how much we can spend, and sometimes, for example, in Nantes we have a very sound financial situation. But nevertheless, we are asked to be very careful about what we invest and so on. And of course, the European Union could help us maybe to say that all the investments we make in this kind of innovation projects can be seen as something different and not fall under the budgetary lines. This can be important as well. And so the last expectations, it's maybe about making it even more easy to get access to the funding, and also to have this direct relation between the cities and the European funding, because as we all know, the fundings go through the nation states and then the regions and then the cities, so it makes the process also very complex. And in the field of innovation, we have to be even more reactive than on other projects, I think. So I think this is also something which can be improved in the future.
Thank you. Santtu?
A lot of great things already been said in this one. I think one of the biggest things for EU is to actually recognize the role of the cities in innovation. In my opinion, EU is still pretty much based on regions or even nation states. I would really like to see the creation of city-specific instruments, and also, of course, this direct dialogue with cities would be really important, because currently, as has been said, the funding application and policy is done by regions and even nation states, and if you look at the cities versus nations, there are a lot of things where they are disagree on what should be done, especially in innovation. Another thing is, of course, if you look at just funding, is the long-term funding. If you look at the curse of the EU funding is that you make streams of 2 or 3 year projects, but if you look at ecosystem development, a decade is a very short time. And we've seen, I think, and all of us have seen, that we create a great project and we put it up, and in 3 years it dead, and then we start again. Well, we should look in the long term. Of course, then there's the question of innovation, which is, in a sense, is messy and unpredictable. EU funding tends to be rules and rules and more rules. And that was very difficult. We've had some very weird experience with EU funding. For example, having schools which are really great innovation platform in Helsinki, and we use them for testing new technologies. And we had a question, well, this is great. This is great project, and you're doing just the right thing with the companies. But someone is learning here. You can't use this instrument for learning. You need a different instrument for learning. So then we had to build another instrument. And then, yeah, but you can't do any investments on this one, even on a small technology or something for teaching. Okay, then we bundled a third project on that one. So it became a very complicated process. One thing, and I'm from economic development, I really don't like regulation in a sense, usually. But regulation is something where EU as a whole should cooperate and work, especially on disruptive technologies and, for example, on data. I don't mean that we should say no to new technologies or new business ideas like Uber or so on, but we would need to regulate and make demands of what are the terms and how they can operate. Simply, for example, if you look at case Uber, give us your data. We need to see where you're operating, what kind of volumes you're operating on. So that would be something where we need EU-wide policies to actually to have leverage against the big global companies.
Fabrizio?
Yes, I'll turn the question around and sort of say...
What do you expect from cities?
Exactly, from the EU. So the first thing and most important is let's say to engage all levels anyhow you can. European elections, 23-26 May, vote and get people to vote. However they vote, it's important, I believe, to have as wider participation as possible. The second is, again, related to research and innovation funding, which is what I'm representing. And we are about to announce a big event in Brussels, 24 to 26 September, which is going to be called European Research and Innovation Days, which will have the usual, if you want, policy discussions, marketplace and so on. But the ambition that we have is also to open the floor to the strategic programming discussions about Horizon Europe. It's basically a forum in which to involve member states and other partners in help us set the lines that will be used for the research innovation funding programs. More of that should come in the coming weeks, and will be confirmed. Last, in terms of funding, there is a very long discussion.
Horizon 2020 is already simpler than FP7. Yes, believe it or not. And we're doing our best to make sure that Horizon Europe will be even better. One program that I recommend is the European Capital of Innovation. Is an action that I will talk about over lunch, and I'm talking about that because colleagues were talking about the difficulty of reporting about funds and using funds, and that is because you have member states on your back, and we need to make sure the funds are well used. We all know this. But the European Capital of Innovation is great because it's money that comes with no strings attached. It's a prize that you win and you use how you want. It's based on trust towards the cities. So I encourage everyone who's interested in this to follow me at lunch.
Javier?
Yes, I was explaining at the beginning of my presentation, I work mostly for the Knowledge Center of Territorial Policies. And like this knowledge center, the GRC holds 6 different knowledge centers. And actually, a common aspect of the functioning of these knowledge centers is co-working, co-creating processes with the regional and local stakeholders. So actually, that is an invitation for representatives of cities here to come to us and co-develop things. As an example, we are developing a process with Amsterdam City. I don't know if there's somebody here in Amsterdam, about studying specific aspects of housing and affordability of housing, and links with financial instruments at the time of addressing housing. So we provide data analysis stuff, we co-organize workshops and things like that, and the results are important not only for Amsterdam but also for other cities, and we can reply the activity there. We also from the smart specialization side, for example, in 2017 we organized an innovation camp, which is a specific methodology to address specific challenges in regions. And out of that activity, actually, there has been a project proposal that at the end was accepted by colleagues of Interreg Europe. And this is happening also in the framework of our activity. So we provide this kind of cooperative and learning frameworks, and again, the invitation for that. And finally, about the urban aspect in Europe, I would say there are efforts for projecting the activity, the urban activity, even beyond the EU borders. Now there is a project called IUC, International Urban Cooperation. It's taking place with several areas of the world, like United States, India, Latin America. And innovation is a key element in this cooperation. So the launch of frequently calls, I can talk to whoever be interested later on that. But to say that there is activity, key activity putting the urban aspect at the center of collaboration. And finally, for the next programming period, at least from the cohesion policy, urban aspects will be a key element established as a policy objective, one of those 5 policy objectives to be addressed in the period 2030-2027. So hopefully there will be more activity in urban aspects also from the cohesion policy point of view. Thanks.
Thank you, Javier. Basically, confirming the slide is not working, so we will go back to the hold manuals for questions from the audience. I don't know if there is any question. There is a microphone somewhere. Okay. The good result. So, Pietro, maybe take the microphone. I don't know if there is any question. Please don't be shy. Yeah.
Good morning. My name is Eric from Twente. I have a question in regard to cities. If we want to make a stronger hand towards the European Commission, is it maybe not time as EUROCITIES that we have a clear definition of what is a city in fact? Is it only a legal entity, or can we make it more broader if you look in terms of connection with other regions, cities? Are we only a government entity? That's what I would like to know. And maybe a second thing, if we talk about new technologies, maybe we have to turn it over. What are the real challenges in society, and what technologies could help us.
Who want to answer first? Maybe André?
Yeah, it's a very good question. Of course, I'm not able to reply directly, but it reminds me on an initiative that we are running in Nantes about more social innovation. We have created a platform for social innovation, and we bring together different stakeholders, and we have created indeed identity for this platform that is independent from the city. So even in terms of logo and brands, and when we implemented this, we had to struggle a little bit because some colleagues from the city said, well, it's the city, the government that is funding the project, that is managing the whole project, but I said that if we want to involve all the different stakeholders, business networks, NGOs, trade unions and so on, it's very difficult for some of them to say that they are under the umbrella of a public institution that represents the city, and said that innovation in particular, it's something which is shared among the different stakeholders. So we have actually created this new identity, and sometimes it's this identity where we have an own governance, where each of the different partners has one voice, and several times when I made suggestions, me as the vice president of the city, we lost the vote, and so we didn't implement the decision. So it's really a new way also for us as a city government to take our responsibilities and to see our role. And sometimes it's now this new entity, this platform, that is partner in events or other policies, and we can even think about creating maybe a legal structure for this kind of platform that could maybe even apply for some funding from the European Union in the future. So I think it's a good question that we have to discuss in this forum, and maybe also in the other forums, about who represents the city, what are the cities, because we need to involve, of course, all the different actors and not only the city government that can speak in the name of all the other stakeholders. Yes.
Who wants to add? Or please, maybe another question?
Ulrike is my name, City of Gothenburg, and I have a question to Santtu. You talked a lot about regulations with different angles. In the beginning you said that regulations are a great tool for innovation. I would like to say a few more words on that, because regulations can change very easily, whilst there have been investments made for innovation. So explain a little bit more, please.
Okay, it's as I said, I really don't usually like regulation. They make the economic development usually quite difficult. But there are cases and places where you can actually use regulation to push towards innovation. For example, if you ban use of fossil fuels in the city center, you will have a large number of companies who need to invent then a new way of approaching the city, whether it's biofuels, whether it's electric vehicles and so on. We have also tested, for example, because the city of Helsinki is a big landowner, setting specific zoning rules of certain buildings. And yes, this plot is for sale, you can compete for it, but it's not only funding price or the monetary price, you will need to do X, Y, and Z on this plot, which are usually things, for example, relating to carbon neutrality or other things that actually then become ways of promoting innovation. On the other side of the regulation, I think one of the biggest challenges in innovation policies of cities is, so far, at least on my job, I'm trying to promote new innovations. But I think one of the challenges for all cities in Europe and the world is going to be which innovations to adapt and how to regulate new kinds of innovations. We need to have new kind of innovation policy, which is more about scanning, trying to adapt, learning from each others on which kinds of regulations or ways of working with innovation and companies, how they work. For example, it was really eye-opener for me a few weeks ago when I was in New York, where they got Uber. And they got really big challenges with Uber. One, because they used to have the taxi token, 14,000 taxis, and that was the cap in Manhattan. You can have 14,000 taxis. They cost $1 million to get the tax permit. Well, now you got Uber. Most of the taxi drivers are in financial struggles because the token is worthless. But the bigger problem is that now they have no control of the amount of Ubers on the streets, which led to the fact that there are a lot more cars on the street, a lot more traffic congestion. Ubers don't like parking because parking is expensive, so the Ubers just drive circles around the blocks. So it is a place of learning for all of the other cities. When the Uber is coming, what kind of regulations do you have? Do you ask for data? Do you ask, do you make some kind of agreement with the company saying that you can have only X amount of cars on X block because they do have the data. They know exactly where the cars are at what point. And this, I think, is very big thing for the future of innovation. It's part regulation, but it's also understanding all of these innovation projects and how they might disrupt the local cities and how we could react.
One more question. Cecilia.
I'm Cecilia from EUROCITIES. I have a question. I like the introduction that we had from Helsinki, where innovation it was defined as based on high quality education, trust and equality. And in the keynote presentation before, we had many examples of innovation taking place in US, which has a model that is very different from equality, trust and high quality education for everybody. Would you say that this is going to be the European model for innovation in cities? And is there still something we can learn from cities in US, which in some way there seems to be more innovative than European cities?
Probably a really difficult question. I think all states, cities, states, and even EU needs to find its own strategy. We cannot compete on same strengths and models that US is, or even China, which can be superbly efficient in innovation, simply because of the scale and amount of people and because you can actually force the policies. So I think all of the cities and states in Europe need to find their own solution. The model that is based on education equality works very well in Finland because it's a very small, quite sparsely populated country. We need to use all of the assets, all of the talent we have. If you look at US, I think US is a different kind of story. Instead of, for example, there's not single United States, there's a bunch of states, very different ones. And if you look at the very innovative places in the United States, it is actually quite small areas that are the places that have been managed to drag in all of the talents from the rest of the US or in one part of Europe or China and India. So what US model is great is in commercializing the technology and the innovation. The way entrepreneurial model is very different. If you look at Finland, one of our biggest challenges is actually commercializing the technology. A few months ago, I looked at the new statistics. Finland ranks #1 and #2 in clean technologies in the world. The early phase of innovation, what we patent and what we create. If you look at where we suck, where we are very bad, is actually commercializing the technology. That is something that the United States is great at. So I think we need to learn from them, but I don't think we can adapt or use the US model as it is.
I just have a question for Mr. Colimberti, because I was shocked by the amount of innovation that the report that you basically unveiled is going to bring. One remark that you made was about the role of financial institutions and how to bridge this kind of human-centered and social model of innovation with the role of financial institutions. And the other thing is, how will Horizon Europe interact with the other funding programs like InvestEU, which of course is a guarantee model, but it has, particularly in some of its strengths, addresses some of the same challenges when we speak about sustainable infrastructure, digital infrastructure, and even social infrastructure, which are kind of one of the aims that you mentioned in your presentation. Thank you.
So, very good questions. On the interaction between the different type of EU fundings, indeed, there are overlaps. We all know that. There are overlaps in names sometimes with urban innovative actions and innovation actions and from Horizon and so on. I think little by little things are being rationalized in the sense that under Horizon at least we will have a sort of more organic pool of proposals. Things will not always will not be rationalized under one umbrella. I don't think that will happen. I think there are political considerations there. And I think if you want, there also is the way of interacting with a very fragmented landscape, in the sense that what happens very often is that the Commission champions one thing or the other based on input which comes from different parts. The result, if you want, which is positive, is that you have more funding opportunities. Of course, from a sort of rationalization point of view, it's not ideal, I completely get that. Talking about finance for innovation, I think the idea is that, I'll give you an example. I was talking about the European Capital of Innovation in 2016 was won by Amsterdam. We all know why Amsterdam may win a title about innovation. Last year in 2018 was won by Athens. That's not technological innovation, that's social innovation. Athens has done marvelous things based on basically putting people in a room and having them interact. So the idea is to incentivize that sort of third sector, bottom-up way of creating innovation. I'll give you another example. We have a number of technology prizes within Horizon, which are inducement prizes that were mentioned earlier today. There is one which was just closed about mobility of older people in urban environments. The winners, I believe, will be announced in September within the same EU R&I days. So yes, the idea again is to sort of, there will be more funding. Horizon has been doubled in terms of size. There will be more going to third sector and sort of non-traditional financial opportunities.
Thank you. Fabrizio, to close the session, I really ask in a minute just to the city representatives to tell us which is the innovation story happened in your city. It just shows that cities are fundamental to foster innovation. So that impressed you most in the recent years. Inspire us with.
Okay. I have in mind two recent urban regeneration projects that, in our view, are changing and innovating the image of Florence together with its lifestyle. I'm talking about the student hotel, a space you will discover tomorrow, and also the old Manifattura Tabacchi that I invite you to visit during your time here in Florence. The once abandoned Manifattura Tabacchi is a monumental space where once tobacco was produced. It's now slowly transforming itself thanks to a strong collaboration between public and private bodies. And so now it's a cluster of aggregation open to all, a new opportunity for the cities. So it's a space for events, it's a meeting space for the neighborhood where participative workshops take place. And it's also an art space, and it's going to be the third educational playground for Polymedia Fashion School. This is a project that is growing together with the neighborhood, not something finished that people happen to find in their cities. I'm convinced that cities need to move towards more indigenous approach and to support new economies from the bottom up.
Thank you, André.
It's difficult, of course, to choose one example, but maybe I'm going to talk about the sailing lab that we are going to create. We have a city lab that is quite similar to what has been presented in the keynote speech. So we offer, of course, our city as a place where innovations can take place, and we want to do the same thing now on the Loire River, because we want to highlight the fact that we are linked to the water, and as I said, the maritime sector, it's one of our strategic sectors because we think that there are a lot of changes regarding transport, but also leisure and so on. And so we now work together with the region on creating a sailing lab where different kinds of innovators can test their new uses, their innovations on the Loire River, and then going up to the Atlantic Ocean as well. So maybe I would like you to invite you to come to discover it, and if of course you have some ideas where you would like to test innovations related to water and the maritime sector, come to Nantes.
So we know where will be the next meeting of EUROCITIES Forum. Last but not least, Santtu.
Same thing, I'm not sure which would be the single project. There are so many different kinds of projects. For example, just on smart mobility, we have currently 60 or so different kinds of testing, pilot, and innovation projects. I think one of my favorites, which is still quite small because in scale and phase, is the 24/7 virtual home. It's basically, we have a challenge of a growing amount of elderly population. So what we have is that we have a virtual connection, basically a pad, which means that elderly people who live at home, if they, for example, middle of the night, feel anxious, feel sick, they don't feel well, can touch a pad, they can get real-time connection with a nurse. There's a possibility of getting telemetry so they can see the pulse, and so if there's a real emergency, they will call help. If it's not a real emergency, they can still arrange to meet a doctor on the next day and tell how to meet there. And it's also now going to be a social network because it connects also the elderly people. There's people can do exercise, and so there's a lot of people connected at the same time. And it doesn't really replace traditional actual healthcare, but makes it easier to reach in case of emergency or quite often just people are alone. So I think it's a great way of using technology to help people to live at home for a long time.
Examples very different from each other, but these are examples showing how innovation can have many faces and how innovation can really help to make the everyday lives of people better. Thank you so much to all the speakers. Now I think it's time for Alexandra to tell us more about Innovation City Lab methodology that followed this afternoon.
Thank you very much. Thank you to all the speakers.